Netflix's live-action Resident Evil series was an abomination and even hit franchise record lows in terms of user scores, but the team behind this initially said it would be a series spanning multiple seasons. They had giant plans for the characters. This story was going to have crazy twists and turns, but I suppose that we'll never see these great storylines because season 1 was so hated, Netflix has officially canceled it. I have a bunch of things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month or support the channel via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. So this was announced yesterday, and as soon as I saw this, I started laughing because this was a show that Netflix was hyping up, that the creators of this series were hyping up. They were talking about how they had all of these big plans for these multiple seasons they wanted to do, but Netflix has decided it was a failure. So this is a Deadline article. Resident Evil series canceled by Netflix after one single season. Netflix has opted not to order a second season of Resident Evil, its action horror series loosely, that's a very good word, loosely, based on the popular video game franchise. The news, which comes a month and a half after the series' July 14th release, is not entirely surprising as the drama did not have a particularly strong showing on Netflix's top 10, and cost versus viewing is the streamer's leading renewal criteria. Running partly in the shadow of the mega genre hit Stranger Things, which was released within the same time frame, Resident Evil debuted at number 2 with an okay 72.7 million hours viewed, but it did not deliver the big week 2 bump one would like to see for a new series as word of mouth spreads, raking in 73.3 million hours viewed in its second week for a number 3 finish, before dropping and falling out of the top 10 after only 3 weeks. The latest Resident Evil incarnation also logged underwhelming 55% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 27% audience score. We basically all knew that it was going to fail. We knew that this wasn't going to get renewed again because it had only, as it says, a 27% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. And if we look at other series like Cowboy Bebop, that had a 60% average audience score, and Netflix canceled Cowboy Bebop because the rating was under a 70%, so there was no way this would be renewed unless it made them suddenly a boatload of money, brought in a boatload of subscribers, and it clearly didn't. It was only the number 2 most viewed thing on launch week. Okay, they need it to be at number 1 and stay at number 1 for as long as it can, and it didn't ever actually even hit the first spot. I watched it. I tried to give it a chance because I love Resident Evil. Resident Evil is such an amazing franchise, but unfortunately, this is what happens when you get people on a project who don't know the source material, and they came out and admitted that they didn't care about the source material. While yes, they were taking names of characters and general themes for this show, they decided to basically throw everything else away. This is what happens when you trash the source material, tell fans their opinions don't matter, and put the least amount of effort into something, thinking it'll be big simply because you slapped a recognizable name on it. Hollywood can't create Resident Evil projects that people love, and they need to clearly go back to the drawing board and figure out what they're doing wrong, which as a Resident Evil fan is easy to see, but to them clearly they're too dumb to understand. If we go on over to Rotten Tomatoes, yes, the average critic score is sitting at a 55%, but the audience score is sitting at a 27%. And of course, if you start reading all of the critic reviews, they basically just say, visually, It's not the worst. Some of the characters are okay, and one of the major selling points for them was diversity because, of course, they race swapped characters. They added a bunch of new original female characters. They definitely went with the diversity route with this show, thinking that would be a massive selling point, and it didn't really work. Even critics said, yeah, well, that's great. The rest of this show isn't good, and of course, audiences absolutely obliterated this series. People were just so unimpressed with this show. I mean, 1 stars, half stars. There are some 5 stars in here, and I bet we're actually going to see a lot more 5 stars be added over the next few days because there are going to be people trying to up the ratings and go on social media tweeting about how Netflix shouldn't cancel this show because it's diverse, because it's inclusive, because it wasn't the worst thing ever created. There will be people simping for this series, hoping it will get renewed, but I mean, people couldn't even get Cowboy Bebop renewed, and that was sitting at a 60%, and that's still bad, but it was sitting at a 60% user score, and there were, I believe, 5,000 to 10,000 people who signed a petition to get Cowboy Bebop renewed, and they're never touching that again. So viewers are rating it things like this. I gave up after 2 episodes. This show is an insult to dumpster fires. Very disappointing. What a waste of time to watch. For the positives, I thought there was some great acting with Lance Reddick. That's the thing, is that if you go to his IMDb and you look at other projects he's been in, this is the only failure he really has under his belt, and I bet that he is super pissed about this show because he is a well-known actor. He's a pretty good actor. Yes, in this, I think that he was cast, he tried to give it a chance. Unfortunately, they didn't do as much as they could have with his character. The show just in general was bad, but I bet they paid him a hefty amount to join this cast, and now he's part of this project that people absolutely hate. This show is so bad. Resident Evil has a lot of potential, but failed in so many levels. Just stick to the video games. I remember when the producers of the show were even coming out saying that, oh, we want to add Lady Dimitrescu to season 2, and we want to add this character and that character to season 2, basically just trying to bait Resident Evil fans into watching this abomination so their viewership would go up, but apparently that strategy also didn't work for them. This is barely a Resident Evil show, and I was thoroughly disappointed by the end of the season. I watched the full season so I could give this show a fair review, and with a small amount of hope it would become more Resident Evil than teenage drama. It didn't. Such slow pacing with a boring story as well. I've talked about this show a couple of times now just because, again, I am a big fan of the Resident Evil franchise. I've played many of the games on the channel. I absolutely love the characters, love the storylines, but unfortunately this show was a giant freaking disaster. And again, it's really no surprise that Netflix has decided to cancel it, but I think it's really hilarious because from the beginning, fans of this franchise were saying, you have a lot to do with this show, you better stick to the source material, give us the characters we want to see, and they decided to go in a completely opposite direction, and then they ended up with this pile of garbage. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.